My name's Scott Redmond. I'm an alcoholic. Hi, everybody. Can you all hear me? Okay. Friend of mine, what? You all right? Cool? You all right? Okay. I want to congratulate the two guys that won the prize tonight. Glad you're here. What other organization in the world gives a standing ovation to newcomers? I mean, but besides Amway, I mean, there's a because they're happy to see the newcomers in Amway because that's another thing, buddy, for the chipping machine there. Because we love you, we're dedicated to you. This banquet is for you. And you might have looked kind of like you felt like you've been voted most attractive man on your cell block tonight. It's an honor, but you don't quite know if you want to show up to get that award. And one of the things, of many things I love about my wife is she always loves the countdown. She loves to see that moment, that fire starting moment. And the great news is that you're here to celebrate with us. And the insane news is we can't keep you sober. All of these people at this banquet, all of this juice cannot keep you sober for 1 second. But the power that arises from the connective tissue of Alcoholics Anonymous and the touch of the Master's hand has wrought things in people's lives and in people's families that is unimaginable. Unimaginable. And when I was new, I had no relative experience. You couldn't have really told me, really with any depth and meaning for me, what happened in AA. The message that had depth and meaning is you drank. You knew what it was like to go out for a pack of cigarettes and wind up in Baltimore. I mean, that's the what had depth and meaning. By the way, I just got to share this with you because it was my friend Cliff was at a meeting once where a speaker said to the crowd, "Can you hear me?" And a guy in the back said no, and a guy in the front said, "I can hear him. Let's change seats." Which I thought was very insensitive. So you might be feeling that way by the end of my talk, but I don't know. I might bore you too. I want to tell you my favorite story about being bored in AA. I love this. It happened. This old buddy of mine named Jeff D from my own group, who's new. We're both going to the North Hollywood group, and he was really new, and he was shifting around in his seat at a meeting, and his sponsor said, "What's the matter?" Jeff said, I'm bored." And his sponsor said, "Well, you know why you're bored." And Jeff said, no, his sponsor said, "You're bored because you're boring. That's why you're bored." The talking's like making me a little nuts. Oh, you're a translator. Well, talk on. Huh. Wow. Hey, Joe, could you clean that up in post? I just made a monstrous idiot out of myself. I'll probably put it on a loop and sell it on a separate tape about stuff. I've been like doing stuff all night. Like I had, like Sue did some with the chairs and they did some with the temperature. And my wife's looking at me with that look. And the look is you're a lemming running to the sea. And you're getting on a roll here. I see the crest of the wave and I'm going to stand back and enjoy the spray. That's what's the, man. And his sponsor said, "You're bored because you're boring." And he went, wow. It was like an acid moment for him. It just went, whoa. It freaked him out. He thought, what a great thing to say to a newcomer. And he could hardly wait till a newcomer told him that they were bored, And 13 years later, no newcomer has told him that they're bored. He's at our home group again. He's got 13 years of sobriety. He's with a young lady who is new, and she's shifting around in her seat. And he said, "What's the matter?" She said, "I'm bored." He said, "Well, you know why you're bored." She said, "Yeah, because I'm with you." I'll go slower for the translation if you want. I want to be nice to you, Belle. I need you to like me by the end of this talk, okay? I want to thank you for inviting my wife and I out. I want to thank all the other speakers and the committee. This is just an incredible deal. We have had a great time. I can't tell you how much we needed this. And if you're new, I'm sure you're thrilled for us. Um, but we really have had a fantastic time. You have treated us with such hospitality and generosity and love. And thank you, thank you. It's just been fantastic. I got to hear my wife speak this afternoon. And for my wife's talks are like a box of chocolates. Never know what I'm going to wind up. Sort of, and it was fun today. It was fun. At times she's offered me to the crowd, so I got off with easy duty today. And she gave a wonderful talk, and it's remarkable for me. I didn't know what alcoholism was. I didn't have alcoholism when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're new and you don't have alcoholism, if you've been bright, like building up a bright outlook for yourself and your family and ripping it down around your ears in a senseless series of sprees, if you fail to recall with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and pain and humiliation of a day or a week ago, if you protect your right to vomit, if you get excited about dental surgery, you could be an alcoholic. If you're not, what's wrong with you? What is wrong with you, dude? Consider the alternatives. You probably do really well by catching the alcoholism. And I caught alcoholism in Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. I did not have it before I got here. And the infection enters through the ear, and an infection, and then you start infecting other people. And so welcome. And if you're new, I want to urge you to stick around long enough to get a diagnosis. Just to get a diagnosis, to find out what alcoholism is. Because when I got here, I didn't have it. I came here for a lot of reasons, but they weren't having alcoholism. And there were a lot of reasons why I couldn't possibly have been alcoholic. Number one, I'm Jewish, and Jews don't drink. Right? Because it might dull the pain. We don't want to squander any agony opportunity. You want to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed for any misery that comes down the pike. One of the first guys that saved my ass. It's getting a little warm in here now, Sue. Right. One of the first guys that saved my life in AA was this guy who, in my first home group, he identified. He said, "I'm an ex-Catholic, which means I don't believe in God, and I'm therefore positive God is going to come kill my ass for feeling that way." And I went, "Oh my God, I'm sitting next to him." I mean, that was the whole story, sir. And there were other reasons why I couldn't have been alcoholic. I had been in psychotherapy for 18 years. I was going to be dead, but I was going to understand it. And I am not putting down therapy at all. I got no beef with therapy. I'm in therapy now. Seriously, I've used therapy plenty in sobriety, and I got no beef with therapy. My colossal mistake is I was trying to treat my alcoholism with psychotherapy, which is like showing up at a gunfight with a knife, once a week. I got my knife, you've got your gun. Let's get it on, and just getting these colossal ass poundings. I mean, the idea of most conventional therapy is to uncover, discover, and unravel, to free associate, to maybe delve into your past. If you're neurotic, if anybody here has been referred to as neurotic, but what a neurosis is you have anxiety, right? And then you come up with a resolution for the anxiety, but it's not good. It creates more anxiety. It's an unsatisfying resolution for anxiety. Your solution is worse than your problem. I don't know if that resonates to the group at all, but that's a neurosis. So I go to therapy to try to come up with a better resolution for my anxiety. And I'm going to therapy. I feel terrible. Why? Well, I was so drunk yesterday. I was too drunk to walk, so I drove. Well, what are we going to do about that? Let's talk about it. I got it. I got a question for you. What were you thinking just before you did it? Nothing. The room spun. My brain got too big for my cranium. My mouth filled with saliva, and I was drunk. Nothing. I feel terrible. Why? Oh, yesterday, sharpen a hypodermic needle on the back of a matchbook striker and suck some heroin up through a fluffed up cigarette filter and eject. I feel miserable. What were you thinking just before you did it? Nothing. Nothing. Let's treat nothing. And here's the horrible part about it. It's the truth. It's the truth. Nothing. Nothing. So, psychotherapy didn't work as a treatment for my alcoholism. I was brought up in the Bronx in New York City. Anybody? Yeah. Anybody? Nobody here's on the witness protection program this year. By the way, it's probably not in Montana. They're on the witness protection program. Not in Chicago on the witness protection program. But I love when I go to Montana and I run into Vito. Vito's there. I love that. I love the prairie. It's beautiful. The prairie is my life. The guy looks like the devil's scouring pad, in the middle of Idaho. And my family is crazy. Crazy. They're still crazy. Just a couple of years ago, my mother called me and said, honey, I got terrible news for you. I said, oh no, Mom, what? Your Aunt Lena died. Oh no, when? 2 years ago. I said, what? She said, well, your Aunt Phyllis is in the mental institution again, and she calls me and harasses me, so I haven't been picking up the phone, but Phyllis died, and I've been answering calls again, and they finally reached me to tell me that Lena's gone. These are the communication skills that I was brought up. They're crazy. My wife never believed me about him until she met him. And my mom threw an engagement party for us, and my Aunt Rose came and wore her wig backwards. And it had a bun on it. And the bun was bouncing off her forehead all night. She wore it jauntily askew, sort of beret style. Huh. Nancy walked around as if she had been struck by a wrecking ball. I mean, it's bad. It's bad. If you got anything for free in my family, man, it was stolen. I had an uncle who was, it really is getting hot up here. It really is. Did somebody turn the heat down? You're wonderful. What a wonderful woman. Honey, am I headed towards disaster or what? No. If you got anything for free on my family, man, it was stolen. I had an uncle. My Uncle Jack was a welder and used to get free bales of steel wool. But here's your check and your complimentary bale of steel wool. And my aunt took a decorating course and made throw pillows and filled all the throw pillows with the free steel wool. And that stuff works its way through on you after a while. So when you went to their house, if you looked at the room, everybody was moving a little bit, The whole room was like a pulsing, living, breathing thing. They were just nuts. And there was chronic institutionalization and suicide attempts and mental and physical abuse. I had relatives who were committed in the back wards of Grassland State Hospital in New York, which is as it's close a shot at hell as you're going to get in this life. And it was I had a really bad time of it. And if you're new, all I've got is good news because my family, and it was really bad, had absolutely nothing to do with making me an alcoholic. I'm not telling you I wasn't injured. I was injured terrible. And I'm not telling you I haven't had to do a lot of stuff about that to have. I'm telling you they didn't make me an alcoholic. I am a bizarre reaction to alcohol. I'm physically allergic to it. I can't control it or enjoy it or moderate once I start to take it into my body. And that's a certain class of people. Doesn't matter how much neurosis you have or anything else. That bizarre. It's a certain class of people. And if you're new, if you're a drug addict, I want to welcome you to AA. If you're a dope fiend, which is somehow worse than any of us, I'd like to welcome you to Alcoholics Anonymous. Welcome, tweakers. Very excited about you people. Very, very. You stay quick for a while. I like you guys. It's special. And I'm not making fun of you. Coming pretty close. But I'm really not, because I don't care. I don't care if you're a tweaking Energizer bunny. I don't care. Just catch alcoholism, you know. And if you don't think you have the allergy, try some controlled crack smoking. Fill your mouth up with crack smoke and say, I'm not the mood, and blow it out. Hats will fill the air. Oh, and I had this allergy, and I have a terrible allergy, and I have a strange mental twist, a twist that has become more pronounced and more magnified and more injurious and more fatal as I've continued to become more sensitive to alcohol, and as my spiritual experience and my spiritual sickness has grown more complex and convoluted, and I've grown more hopeless in the hands of it. It's a weird mental twist that just says, oh, allergy? What are you, nuts? You don't have an allergy. You're fine. And I still have this kind of thinking. I had this kind of thinking to almost 20 years in. That's why I do more in AA now than I've done since I was new. And those are the people I've been hanging out with since I got sober. People who, when things get bad, they do more. When things get good, they do more. They do more. I was about 14 years sober, and I needed surgery on my hand. And the doctor said, Mr. Redner, you're going to need general anesthetic. And I say, oh, general anesthetic? That's great. Normal people don't get excited about general anesthetic. There's no normal human being that will go, oh, general anesthetic. It's like they've seen a cute puppy, But I do, because I know about general anesthetic. I know when they hit you with it, they say count backwards from 100. They go 199. I love 99. I love 99. But I won't chase it. I won't trade in this way of life for 99. A couple of years after that, I was 16 years sober. I was seeing a different doctor, and this doctor says, you're going to need that surgery you had on your hand. You need it on your other hand. And I said, I guess we'll be having some of that general anesthetic. And this doctor said, you don't need general anesthetic with that. And my first thought was, no, I need another goddamn doctor. It's what I am in right now. Now, I wish this wasn't true, but a year ago, I was like 18 years sober. I needed a biopsy, and it sounded like a bad deal. So I said to my doctor, I said, you're right, Nancy, I've done something terribly wrong. It's the air conditioner. I'm going to kill everybody, right? Is that it? The talk that killed everybody. Will you be happy then? Oh, stop it. Wow. Man, am I asking for it tonight or what? It's open. Hey, rein that in. So I had to go for this biopsy, and I said to my doctor, will they give me something to relax me? And I discussed it with my sponsor because they got to put this big needle in it. And he said, yeah. So I go to the hospital. I go into the outpatient surgery thing, and the nurse tells me, I said, are you good? The relaxing thing. And she said, okay. And the guy comes, he puts an IV in me, and I said, we're going to do the relaxing thing now, right? And he goes, no, they do it downstairs. So they roll me downstairs, and the people downstairs say, well, hold yourself this way. I said, whoa, wait, where's the relaxing thing? And they said, we'll get the doctor. So this other doctor comes in. I said, are you going to relax me? He goes, no. I said, well, they all told me they were going to relax me. And he said, that's because you look crazy. None of them have been willing to tell you you're not getting relaxed. They figured you'd wind up here and you're already looking pretty dopey and half naked. And, it's really embarrassing. And I have this bizarre physical reaction to drugs and alcohol that makes it impossible for me to stop. Now, this weird thinking that keeps driving me to take a drink I can't stop taking. And as a result of it, I developed this horrible cancer of the soul. And I started developing it real young, growing up in the Bronx, right out of the gate, starting at 12 years old, drinking and taking drugs. I tried to join a gang and failed. I failed gang in 101. I was being brought into this gang. We used to drink beer, and we used to steal cars and have demo derbies. Where are they now? And And I was brought in by this guy, George. There's a ring of guys around me. And he said, look, we just do Chevy Biscaynes and Fairlanes. You knock out the fly window, you get in. It had on, off, and lock on the column. He said, if it's on off, you just take your house key, turn the car on, and drive off. That's how easy those cars are. He said, if it's on lock, shut it, get another car. And I looked around and I said, what if it's on? He said, then someone's in the car, you moron. And I failed Gang 101, and but the hippies were signing up people. They no paperwork there. There was no test for the hippies, and I got right in there real quick, and I loved it. I loved the '60s. I had a really too bit of time, and I drank. I didn't want to be an alcoholic, so I overcame my problem with marijuana. I'd like to welcome all the pot smokers here tonight. You remember? Do you even remember what you're clapping at? I guess we do. Because they start watching the trails coming out of there. Nope. You remember WOW, right? Wow. 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 But right after WOW usually came, what? What? Wow, what? Wow, what? Wow, what? Wow. Wow. What? Watching a pot smoker is like watching a dog try to run on the linoleum. There's a lot of activity, but no movement. I kicked that goddamn marijuana problem with, oh no, I've injured someone. I kicked that marijuana with pills, and yeah, overcame that pills with acid, and overcame my LSD problem with cocaine. Cocaine's a very good drug. It's particularly good for sex if you enjoy sex from the Neolithic period. Ooh. And I overcame that terrible cocaine problem with heroin. Heroin was a very dark, complicated, artistic drug, and you cross the line and become a vomiting pig. And I don't mean to offend anybody by talking about drugs. I've been asked to tell my story. I've got alcoholism, and if you have a hard time with it, I did not come all the way here to piss anybody off. Please don't come up after the talk and straighten me out. Really. Talk to Sue. She asked me to come here. She heard my tape. It's her fault. You're a bad woman, said Church. And I almost died. I started therapy really young at the age of 14 because I dropped out of public school. I kept getting thrown out of schools. I tested in excess of very high IQ, and I was cut off from the society of other people, and it started getting bad for me pretty quick, but I started suffering from chronic success at a pretty young age. When I was in my early 20s, I was hitchhiking down from the Bronx. I had shot some heroin, and I was hitchhiking down in Manhattan, and my aunt and uncle picked me up on the highway. My father had had a massive stroke, and I was taken to the hospital, and I couldn't be there for my father the night that he died. I just couldn't show up. I was there, but I wasn't there. I couldn't be there for my brother or my mother, and I couldn't even go into the room and touch my pop on the cheek and give him a kiss and tell him I love him and watch him take his light into another room because I was an animal. I was a pig. I had holes in my arms. I had a head full of opiates, and I was garbage. I had no, and I had already so rearranged my life to accommodate alcoholism that there was no good here. My father wasn't moving on to anything. My father wasn't making a transition. He was dying, dead, done. We're done. Move on. And I had to do some pretty quick work. I couldn't bear. I used to say to my wife, I can't fit the pain in my head. I couldn't bear the idea that I was this guy who had collapsed as a man, as a son. And I had to do some pretty quick work, and I did. And I figured out real quick that it was heroin and needles. And all I had to do was never put a needle in my arm again, and I wouldn't be the guy who couldn't show up for his father. So I didn't touch a needle again. Not for 13 years. Shortly after this, I was acting in a Broadway play. I got to reach and surpass just about every dream I ever had before I came to AS. And I was acting in a Broadway play, and this new usherette with long brown hair walked in, and I took one look at her. I don't think that we really talked before I did this. I went back into the dressing room of this theater, and I stood on a chair, and I said, if anybody talks to the new usherette with long brown hair, I'll break all the bones in your hands and feet. And we've been married 20 and a half years. So, what? In part because we've never wanted to get divorced at the same time. No, well, if you got some years in, you know what I mean. There's some timing and some luck involved here. And we had a great time. A great time. If you're new here, you're going to hear some wacky stuff about alcoholism now that you're sober. Some of it works for me and some of it doesn't. The stuff that doesn't work for me, I have never found in the big book of AA, ever, ever. I've heard that alcoholics don't like change. I don't like change I don't like. But I love change I like. I mean, I really like it. I've never heard anyone get to a podium and say, oh, I just hit the lottery. I'm having sex with identical twins. It's killing me. I'm beside myself. I've heard that alcoholics are perfectionists. I'm a paver. I'm not a perfectionist. The only time I seem to have an explosion of perfectionism is when my wife is caring for me. Then I seem to get very, very perfectionistic. It's my perfectionism seems to be person specific. But my favorite is I have heard that alcoholics are above average intelligence. I have only heard this at Alcoholics Anonymous reads. I have never heard it anywhere else. It's not in the literature. I've never heard it at an Al-Anon meeting, ever. So smart. We had a great time. One of the most misquoted lines in the big book of AA, I've heard people say, my worst day in here is better than my best day out there. No, it's just not true. Let's see, a pound of cocaine in an all-female jazz band or a panel at the prison. Geez, I don't know. What do you want to do? What the book says is I wouldn't trade my worst day in here for my best day out there because I won't trade this way of life. I won't. I won't settle for 99. I won't be a sucker anymore. I won't do it. God has allowed me to see the whole field like a good quarterback. I won't, and that makes an incredible amount of sense to me. And Nancy and I had a great time. We were young. We were living in New York. I was acting on Broadway. It was fun. And she started becoming very troubled. Very troubled. I came home one day and poured an entire bottle of wine into this big cup we had. And I turned and my wife is looking at me like this. And I said, what? And she said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm having a glass of wine. Can't a man have a glass of wine in his own home? And I got a job at a restaurant, stole a lot of money, and we went to Europe and treated it like it was like just a great trip. And 90% of it was stolen dough. I mean, the alcoholic life became the only normal life. A guy lent us his car and we sold his car. I will never forget this guy's voice on the phone as long as I live. He said, you sold my car? That's like house sitting for someone and they come back and you're in escrow. And I mean, I looked at my wife and I said, I am so sick of being a punk, irresponsible kid. We're not borrowing money. We're standing on our own 2 feet. Let's sell the car. And my wife looked at me and said, let's. I was about 10 years sober and I was giving a talk and Nancy's sponsor was at the talk and Nancy and her were sitting in the front row. And I shared that story and I saw my wife's sponsor turn to her and go, what? And she pointed at me. She went, hip. Our son Micah was born and we were surrounded by friends and family and got a ton of phone calls. And he was really welcomed into our community. very beautifully so. Got a lot of attention and a lot of friends. And just 2 years and 9 months later, when we had our second child, we had become so isolated by alcoholism that no one came to the hospital. No, it was too painful to be around us. We pressed ourselves on the people around us like a thermocline grease. It was just too hard, too scary. I found my wife locked in the bathroom a couple of weeks before Jessie was born, crying, and she told me that she felt that she was making the date sick. I don't know, unless that alcohol. What was that, Sabra? That's a spiritual titty quirk. We went to the hospital that day to have the baby, not knowing if the doctor would show up or not because we hadn't paid it. I mean, the attendant misery and suffering, anxiety and strain and stress and isolation that this spiritual disease, if you knew, you must be exhausted. I was exhausted when I came out. I was saying, so you hear a lot of people talk about how angry they were on the Sunday. I was plenty angry, but you know what? I was brokenhearted and tired more than anything else. I was busted in the hells and burnt dead. And then things got really bad. Things got really bad. Jesse was born. Our sweet, incredible son, Jesse, was born, and it was a miserable day. Eesh. And a doctor called me that night from the hospital and said, Mr. Redmond, your baby's in an incubator. Your wife is completely alone here. There's not been a balloon, a flower, or a foam ball. Where are you? And I said, you know what? I can't hide anybody from watching our 2-year-old son. I came from Bar. And this doctor, who I had never met before, in a huge metropolitan hospital, said to me, you know what? My husband's home. I'll give you my address and phone number. You could bring your son over to my house, and he'll mind your kid for you. And I said no, because I had no way to accept this woman's generosity. So now my son has to be trapped in the house with this awfully sick man, racked with guilt and self-loathing. I would have done better to take him to the hospital waiting and lead him to the color book just to get the hell away from me for a while. And little were we to know that it was going to continue for 3 more years. 3 more years of having our nose pressed up against the glass of life. And by the time we got to Alcoholics Anonymous, that I got to Alcoholics Anonymous on April 22nd, 1985, the boys were just a wreck. They were reading and writing years below the grade level. They couldn't complete a lot of small tasks. There was nothing organically wrong with them. They were so disrupted from being scared so much that I didn't know. I hadn't read our literature. I hadn't read about the warped lives of blameless wives and children. I didn't know that the lists in chapter 2 and 3 that are hardwired into our heads, what's the use anyhow? I'll stop after the 6th read. How did this happen again? I didn't know that echoed all the way through the alcoholic family. And when a kid is locked into either giving up or being pointlessly aggressive en route to a goal that never gets achieved, they get shattered. How much can a baby bear when every time the child gets in between me and a drink, or eventually every time, the baby disappears? They vanish. They become something less than yielding, or they disappear. They become paper mache, or they go away. How much can the baby bear before the baby believes what it's being taught, which is that it's really not there? And if it wants to get there, if it wants to be there, it has to make some kind of crazy demonstration. What a horrible design for living. And that was the way we lived. And I'll tell you where we wound up. We started on Broadway, and this was a good morning in the Redmond home. A couple of months before I got sober, I got into a car accident. I was taken to the hospital, and my blood pressure was about like 180 over 110. I was ready to strike and to stroke out. And the doctor said, you know what? We need to medicate you. We need to get your blood pressure down. You need to lose weight. And I said, I would really like to do that, but I smoke marijuana and drink alcohol before I go to bed every night, so I'm not going to be able to. And the doctor said to me, well, why don't we prescribe some medication for you? And I said, what a country. And he prescribed chloral hydrate for me, which is, wow. You don't get that at the Rotary Club, by the way, when you When you say chloral hydrate, no one throws their skirt over their head or anything. It's for it's it's a knockout drop. It's a fast-acting sedative. It's like getting hit in the head with a sap. And I love these pills. I love my knockout drops. So at night, I'm taking handfuls of knockout drops, and I'm slamming my arms into the wall to keep myself awake to enjoy my knockout drop, because you don't want to waste a perfectly good knockout drop. So I'm eating handfuls of pills, slamming body parts into the wall until I just seize. I keel over, and I'm in bed, and now I'm incontinent like the rest of the 33-year-old men in America, because I got too much Mickey in me to go and to the bathroom. So one day I got up and wet the wall. And my wife was excited the next morning. Was like, he wet the wall, he's headed towards the bathroom. This is great, you know? We got something going here. It's progress, not perfection. That was a good morning in the Redmond home. And a couple of months after that, I crossed the line I swore I would never cross again. I put a needle in my arm. And now why I didn't make it okay to put a needle in my arm, I don't know. Why didn't I just move the whole world so that would be all right? I've drawn the line in the sand a million times. I can't tell you. It's a mystery to me. It's an absolute mystery to me. I call my therapist of record in my 18th year of psychotherapy. I told him what I had done, and he said to me just about the exact same thing that Carl Jung said to the man who 12-stepped Bill Wilson. He said to me, there's absolutely nothing that can be done for you. I can't help you. And then he said to me those other words, the only thing we can do is perhaps have you institutionalized. And then he said to me the thing Carl Jung couldn't say for Roland Hazard. He said, or you can attend a meeting of Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous. Why I went to the AA meeting is a complete mystery to me. I don't know why. I went to this meeting in the San Fernando Valley called Unit A. I walked into this group, I took one look around, and I said to myself, oh my God, how did I wind up in Alcoholics Anonymous? How lame is this? This is beyond lame. This is beyond church, beyond synagogue. This is some plateau of lameness I never even imagined was available to me. Alcoholics Anonymous. And the room looked like it was the product of like 200 years of inbreeding to me. I read about. There were like identical twins carving their initials on each other's feet in the back of the room. Or so it seemed to me. And everything was America. I'm America. Yeah, America. America. The furniture and coffee are miracles too. Oh my God. And I'm waiting for the Jew hunt to break out, right? I know that's going to come in it. Come on, Jaime, strap these antlers on. Here. Always wanted to run a big buck Jew. And the AA unsolicited information guy, he caught me at the end of the meeting. You know him, right? Wearing a belt buckle large enough to serve an entire fish on. Huh? Do I want what you've got? No. But thanks for spitting on me. I really appreciate it. You're a miracle. It was horrified. I went back to that meeting every morning for a year. And I think I did it. I don't know. It's a mystery. But it might have been because I was out of plans. And if you're new here, I'd pray for you that you're out of plans. If you're new here and you had a plan, it's probably a beaut. My favorite newcomer font is the one more dope deal to set myself up financially for sobriety. What? If you're new, this applause is not meant to encourage you. It's a sign of identification. We're not saying, you go, boy. I sold heroin to a New York City policeman when I was a teenager, which was, he cheated. He wasn't even wearing a uniform. And I had watched TV, and somehow I got it into my head from watching TV that if you asked somebody who you were selling drugs to that if they were a cop and they said no and they were a cop, that it was entrapment. I don't know what episode of Starsky and Hutch I had seen this on, but this is what I had in my head. The cops come, they take me away. I said, dude, this is bogus. And they said, what are you talking about? I said, that woman, I asked her if she was a cop. She said no. She lied to me. And he looks at me and goes, we're supposed to lie to you, you idiot. You're a criminal. We're policemen, and we're supposed to lie. I felt less than when I. Today, I'd say, don't shame me. Oh, the man. And I went to AA. I was out of plans. I went to Alcoholics Anonymous. I showed up and went to this morning meeting. And I don't know why. It's a mystery to me. And I stuck around Alcoholics Anonymous for a couple of months. I've started getting to know some of the people there. Got to know this guy, Milton, who I fell in love with. And his wife is to become my wife's sponsor, having nothing to do with Milton and I, having to do with what had happened to those two women as members of the Sisterhood of Al-Anon. And I was stuck around for 6 months. I enjoying the gift of step none. And I was doing nothing and getting the gift of nothing. Although it was better that I wasn't drinking, but I wasn't treating my alcoholism. So I was really starting to live in a psychological feedback. I mean, I was really starting to go mad, really mad, And I'd step around AA for 6 months, and I'd seen the AA drill hundreds of times in just 6 months. People came in and did the work and changed. People came in, didn't do the work, didn't change, got sick, got sicker, got to the podium, shared their gift with us, and shared their ass right out of the door, or stayed here and became columns of human sewage and sexual predators, although I judge no man. Because I'm too spiritually developed to judge anyone. I knew I was going to drink, and I asked the guy to sponsor me. He was a great guy. And he invited me over to his house. He made sure I'd done some reading for the big book of AA. And he sat down and he read chapter 5 to me. And on the way through, he took me through the first 2 steps. We reached step 3 and got on our knees and said a prayer together. And he went back and he gave me instructions on how to do a 4th step to the big book of AA. And I stopped feeling like I was stealing somebody's chair here. That I know for sure. And it took me 3 months to do my inventory. I went back and I read into him at 9 months of sobriety. And I did step 6 and 7 for the first time. And came time to do my 8-step list. I try to share this anytime I talk because it's simply the best reading of step 8 I've ever heard. It happened, I was a couple of weeks sober at my home group, the North Hollywood group at that time, the men's meeting there. And there was a guy there with a hospital group. He had never read chapter 5 before. He had hospital plastic on. His name was Nino. He had a heavy New York accent. Never seen him since. This was almost 20 years ago. And he's reading chapter 5, and he got up for the first time. And he got up to step 8, and he read, made a list of all those we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Jesus Christ. And he looked out into the room as if to say, have you seen this? Has anybody taken a look at this? And man, I'm telling you, I've never heard it said so gorgeously in my life. Because I looked at that and I went, whoa, I would not have taken that much money if I knew I had to give it back. Oh, you think I'm a moron? Oh, man. If you're new, don't worry. It's 8 steps from where you are right now. And 8's not even the annoying one. 9. I read my fifth step to my sponsor when I was 9 months sober, and I had a lot of stuff or some material about Nazi Germany on my inventory. I was terrified of this stuff as a kid growing up in a Jewish home. I was sent to religious school when I was a kid. We were shown those horrifying films of bodies being bulldozed. I had a lot of nightmares about it when I was a kid. Also, in my neighborhood in the Bronx, you got beat up if you were a Jewish kid by a couple of the gangs in the neighborhood. So it was a deal for me, and I had a lot of that stuff on my inventory. And I read to my sponsor in that fifth step, but 9 months of sobriety, he changed my life, hopefully forever. It certainly is up into including today. Said, I'm resentful at Nazis for slaughtering Jews during World War II. It affects my self-esteem, pocketbook, ambition, personal relations, and sex. Now, what are the defects of character in me that if God would remove the resentment would be gone? Resentment's no big deal. It's just the source of all spiritual illness, the great destroyer of all alcoholics. It'll cut you off from the sunlight of the spirit, drag your ass out, and kill you dead. But don't worry about it. Work a step a year. Not a bit that. Because you see, I don't just dislike stuff. I hate it. And I re-experience the hatred. When I hate, when I wake up, I water the hatred like a little flower. I want to make sure it's developing and it's well taken care of, you know? The worst thing is when I forget to hate something, you know? And the guy goes, hi. And I go, hi. Oh, I hate him. Why did I do that? I forgot that I hate him. I'm going to have to redouble my snubbing and glowering just to get back where we were. I mean, I hate so that when my head hits the pillow, it becomes a rotisserie. It eats my brain and my heart and turns my life black. There's no room for me in my own life. I'm going to die. So what is it in me? Blue skies, magic wand. What are the defects in me that if God would remove the resentment against Nazis would be gone? Let's try this. How about nothing? How about nothing? Maybe I'm a coward. I'm too cowardly to go and kill them all. And my sponsor said, you don't understand. You don't understand what they're asking you. They're not asking you if the event was your fault. He said, was the event your fault? I said, no. No. He said, is the resentment your fault? Every time. Without exception, with no loopholes. What would a normal, reasonable person do if they hated Nazis? Well, they might work against Nazis, work for political programs, give funds to those programs. They might do a lot of stuff, but I don't do that. I just talk a lot of long crap and never get out of the living room. And I'm consumed with this hatred. He said, is the event your fault? No. Is the resentment your fault? Every time with no exception. And what are the defects of character in me that if God would remove? I'm a bigot. I hear someone's got a German accent. I don't want it. You know, I've got this stuff. You know, I'm not living in today. I'm a grudge holder. I'm a hypocrite. I'm an opportunist because I've used this opportunistically a couple of times. I'm filled with self-pity. This is one of the hardest defects of character lists I've ever written in my life, and it changed my life. And I walked out of there a free man. I don't know a free man yet, but certainly well on the road. And is the event my fault sometimes? Yeah. The event is my fault plenty of times. My resentment against my relatives who abused me, was the event my fault? Absolutely not. Now, we all have our own inventory. Somebody might say to a 3-year-old kid, well, he's a nasty little kid, a loud little kid. He needed A, B, C, and D done to him. Not in my world. That's just me, but that's just me. There's no excuse for being a little kid. So is the event my fault? No. Is the resentment my fault? Every time with no exception. Because the next 19 years of trying to make my aunt's life a living hell, that's on me. You tell me you like my aunt. I go, no, you don't, and this is why. And the template of that is in Alcoholics Anonymous, when maybe one of the newcomers I'm working with says, God, I really like that guy in AA. And I could say that I got all sorts of information about this guy and why he's a hose, right? But I've been taught in Alcoholics Anonymous that everything that's said in AA needs to be said. I might not be on the list of people who needs to hear it on any given day. So if I go to the guy I sponsor and I go, no, you don't like him. No, he's not good. No, he didn't affect you at the meeting. No, you didn't like his share. Shame on me. Shame on me. What was good for my aunt is great for Alcoholics Anonymous. And I didn't know what I was going to do about a lot of stuff moving forward. I didn't know what I was going to do about my wife or my kids and my father. I could not sit down with my wife and my children and say, I'm sorry. They were the two emptiest words in my vocabulary. It was like having a mouthful of ashes. And my sponsor said, look, I don't know what you got to do. I don't know what you got to do to get your dad back in your life. I couldn't talk about him. I couldn't look at pictures of my father. It just felt like I was getting hit in the head with a brick anytime my dad came up. And my sponsor said, I don't know, man, let's go. Do your job. Let's do your job in AA. Do your job in Alcoholics Anonymous. Address your inventory as your spiritual task, and let's see what happens. You told Nancy and I not to get involved in our first year, and we didn't. We stayed the hell away from each other. I didn't have anything to bring to my marriage. I didn't know how to fight. I would either scream until she shut up or I would cry until she shut up. Either one's fine. I've always liked the tyranny of helplessness. I've always enjoyed that. And I'm a loomer. I like to loom. I'm big. I like to get a light behind me, get her in a shadow while I'm looming. It's like total eclipse of the Jew if I get her just right. And if I can work a loom, a scream, and a cry in a one fight, that's a hat trick. It doesn't get any better than that. I give you the Scott Redmond Couples Workshop right now. Take 11 seconds. Here we go. Talk to her until she changes her mind. Just talk to her until her eyes roll back in her head and she keels over. And on the way over, she goes, okay. I'm bringing nothing. I can't clean my house. I feel like a kid. I'm a 33-year-old man. I feel like a child. I've stood next to guys 10 years younger than me my whole life and said, I wonder what it's like to be grown up. What a crappy way to live. You're $1 short and a day late every day. I didn't know that grown men make their beds. Grown men clean up. Grown men, I think somewhere in the back of my twisted mind that a certain amount of housework should equal a certain amount of sex. That there should be like conversion tables on the back of cleaning products. Of housework to sex. That's an interesting sign there. And Nancy and I really stayed away from each other. She was talking this afternoon, these crazy, crazy rules for our kids. They weren't allowed to curse, eat sugar, or watch TV. So Nancy would give them a healthy breakfast and put them in the car with me, Dr. Death. That's it. Hope you live. Have a good day. It was just crazy. And we started making a beginning. I had to do stuff I didn't want to do. I had to go into school and advocate for my children. I went in and I ran a reading group in my son's second grade class, and the boys were very injured. And we sat down and we said, you know what? Our family's been very ill, and because we've been very sick, and we're making a beginning. Can you help us? And no one ever said no. No one ever denied us that. They said, yeah, we have plenty of resources. Let's test the boys. Let's see what's going on. And they got special ed classes, and they said, get them into music, get them into sports. Let's see if the big motor stuff impacts the small motor stuff. And so we did. Spent a couple of booze bucks buying them a mitt, which I had never really done before the right way, and got them registered for the Little League. We become uncivilized, cut out from the society. And Jesse wanted to play drums, and I didn't have any money. So I went to the music store and got him a drum pad, which is a piece of wood, a piece of rubber, and a couple of sticks. But my kid wanted some, and I backed him up. It was a big deal for me. I went to my home group that week, and I told the guys what I had done. And I'll tell you why I told them. I told them because they were interested, because they were rooting for our family, because they were really, really excited about us. Just like you guys that took the book tonight. They were excited about us. And I was proud of what I had done. And within a couple of months, the AA drum set showed up at our house. There were a lot of burnout drummers in my home group at that time. Jesse had this drum set. When he sat behind it, he disappeared. Guys were coming over with these Megadeth drums going, dude. And the same thing happened with Mike and his stuff. And a couple of years ago, I went and saw my kids play on the Sunset Strip in L.A. At the House of Blues. And they burnt the dump down. They burned it down. Playing hip-hop music to this packed room, 800-900 kids elbow to elbow, and they were just incredible. And off to the side is this group of middle-aged weeping alcoholics, Renee. The kids are going, what is with the crying old people, man? Well, usually bands bring backup singers. They've got these seemingly well-traveled group of people over there. And that's their Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon aunts and uncles that have been following them around for the past 18, 19 years. When I was about a year sober, I started becoming really very spiritual. I got to tell you something. I get a huge kick out of our co-founders. This is, you showed a wonderful movie called My Name's Bill W. It's a terrific movie. And Bill would, I don't know how much of a fight Bill would put up with having a big picture of him. If you're new, this was our promoter and this was our saint. There's a wonderful story I love about Bill's humility. The guy who wrote the screenplay for My Name is Bill W. became close with Lois. He hung out with Lois a lot. It's a couple years before she passed on. And got to know her and found out in the course of putting the material for the screenplay together that Bill Wilson had been offered the cover of Time magazine, his picture, and he turned it down. And this writer said to Lois, that is unbelievably humble. And Lois went, oh, you think so, huh? It was really humble. And the guy said, yeah. And Lois said to him, how many people have been on the cover of Time? And he said, thousands. She said, right, thousands. How many have turned it down? One. And he told people as often as he possibly could. Yes. And I was becoming sort of a spiritual Goliath in my first year. I was starting to sponsor guys, and I had a writing job at 20th Century Fox, and this company made an overture to me to be the staff director on a situation comedy. And I thought if I got this job, that it would be so good for the guys I sponsor. Would really help them out. Because they'd see the program in action. Oh, man. At any rate, I directed one episode of this sitcom. I didn't get the job as the staff director, and I almost drank. I was at a picnic that they threw for the show. The producer handed me a beer, and I said, thanks, because I was there to bring nothing. I was there to get a job. I was bringing nothing. And I already knew better because I already knew what I was doing with my family, but I hadn't moved my AA work. It hadn't infected the rest of my life as much as that. But you know what? It infected enough so that when the air hit my face, I went, you're a dead man. And I put the beer down. I called my sponsor, and I told him what had happened. And he said to me, well, I guess you have the show business god. I said, what? And he said, well, what keeps you sober? I said, God keeps you sober. He said, so God keeps you sober. You didn't get the show business job and you almost drank. So I guess you have the show business God. And he has abandoned you utterly. And when I came to AA, I heard God getting people in relationships, God getting people jobs, God getting people parking spaces. Wow, not the parking space God. And if you have a parking space God, it gives you a space, pass it on. At any rate, we were nailed in the Northridge earthquake. I'm sure a lot of you heard about it. It was the last really big earthquake in California some years ago. We got injured really badly. Our house got busted up, and I got a physical injury, and we got beat up real good. And shortly after that quake, we were at a AA function out of town, and this woman who used to live in Los Angeles came up to me at this function and said to me, God, I'm so glad God got us out of LA before the quake. And I said, oh, so he likes you. He likes you, but we're crap, but he likes you. And she said to me, I guess he just felt you had some lessons to learn. I'm out of here. I can't live in a world with a God that's saying, get him. Get the Redmond boy. Get him. Get him. No evacuation plan for you, Jew boy. Get him. Get him. Kill his goat. Put a finger in his eye. Turn his wife to salt. Get him. Smote his ass. Smote him. Smote anyone he talks to. I know that God's keeping her sober. That God wouldn't keep me sober for a minute. My God expects me to do my job in Alcoholics Anonymous if my children get annihilated or if they grow up and have robust, happy lives. My God expects me to do my job in AA if my job is to show a guy how to live in a refrigerator box or the house on the hill. My job is to be as free as possible of resentment, fear, and sexual misconduct. So when I draw close to him, he reveals himself to me. I can't live in a world where I've got a God saying, well, let's key your car. It's boils for you. I think you're due for a rash. You know, I believe the mystics. I believe St. Thomas. I believe the big book of AA. No one could fully comprehend or define that power, which is God. To know God is to not know God. God is absolute mystery. I believe that, and I believe that every time I ascribe an intention or a personality to my higher power, I cut the field on my higher power. It becomes this big. I want to continue to be renewed daily by a radiance beyond my comprehension. That's a mystery. It used to be a mystery that scared the crap out of me and that I was too scared to really live with. It's a mystery now that I'm hungry for. Every time someone tries to pin it down and say, well, I guess God wanted you doing that for a living, it's just me. My God doesn't care. And, I know the way I'd like my life to be. It's funny, I've got some really miserable ideas. I don't have a lot of dough. And I have, through the years, in sobriety, had to write a lot of 10 steps because I think my sons would benefit more if I had a lot of money. Our younger son is a student at Columbia University, and our older son just got accepted into Cornell Graduate School. Things just haven't worked out at all. If I just had some money, I feel like if I only had a brain, it's just... And they've done it all themselves, When Michael was about 8 years old, I'd been in the program, I think 2 years, and I was making lunch for the boys, and I said, what do you want on your hot dog? He said, I want mustard, onions, and lettuce. I went, lettuce? He said, yeah, okay, I don't want lettuce. And he walked away, and he came back about 45 minutes later and looked at me directly in the eye and said, I will never again allow your opinion of what I want affect what I ask for. What's that? What the hell is that? So my sponsor said, you're going to have to write a 10-step because you almost drank out of resentment against yourself. You got a resentment against these guys for not giving you the job. And when you do 6 and 7, and you humbly ask him to remove these shortcomings, ask him what you should do to help. And he said, you got to find a world big enough so you can stay sober and not get a show business job. And I did 6 and 7 that day. After I read the inventory to him, I said, Pop, you got it. Take show business. I'll do anything you want me to do for a living. Just keep me sober. And 3 months later, I was working as a cook on a catering truck. And I looked up to God and I said, I did not mean this at all. This wasn't even on the long list. I have no idea where this came from. Now, in LA, when they make a TV show or a movie, they hire a caterer. Caterer follows the people around, makes food for them. You make a lot of dough. It's Teamster dough. You're on a vehicle on a movie set. But I'm Scott Red. And the first show that I feed, the executive producer and star of the show is a guy who I had worked with in the business. And he stuck his head on the truck that first morning and he said, can I have a burrito? Scott? And I said, what's happening, man? And he said, is this your truck? I said, no, but it's my spatula. I got home that night and I called my sponsor and I said, we're getting the gift now. It's beautiful. It's beautiful, this gift. He said, sounds like you've got a resentment. And I did 10-step after 10-step. I showed up and gave them a dime for their nickel. I wound up serving people who had been my assistant directors, actors who I had directed in soap operas. I would come home with a new tale of humiliation every week to my home group. The guys would go, oh! And I got to help some guys that felt they had fallen from a height when they came to AA. They hadn't reached the top rung of the ladder in Alcoholics Anonymous, which is Child of God. And once you hit the heights of that, there's no place to fall. I had a friend named Paul who used to feel like he had fallen from a height when he came in, and he used to say this prayer. He'd say, "Pop, I'm willing to do anything you want me to do for a living, but don't let it be as bad as what we did this guy." It is. I, I was so glad to help him out. And I cooked for about 3 years, and my son Jesse asked me to teach him how to cook. And that's not a way that I was going to get intimate with my kid. I thought that we'd get to know each other by buffing my Oscars. We'd on Oscar buffing night. That's how we'd really bond. And he and I are still cooking together. Still cooking together, having a great time. And I did it cooked for about 3 years. I was again becoming really kind of a spiritual Goliath at that time. And I had an overture made to me by this big public relations company, Ketchum Public Relations, for this big time comedy writing job. And I really thought, if I got this would really benefit the guys I sponsor. All right, it's a no-brainer, because they'd seen me suffer, and now they'll see me prosper thusly. And I did a videotape for these guys, and my brain blew up before I even found out about the job. I just went bananas, and I released it. I did the 10th step. I read it to my sponsor. I was cool. A couple of weeks later, I get a call from my company to cater some commercials in the mountains above LA. Hop in the truck, I get up there, and I grab the call sheet. The call sheet is a piece of paper that gives you all the information about the shoot. And I see that the commercials are for Ketchum Public Relations. I'm feeding them now. Now I'm feeding them. And I look at the end of the truck, and there's a guy videotaping me. And I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm taping the making of the commercial." He's taping my humiliation. And he's going to go back to New York with this tape of me holding meatloaf and show it to these guys. And they're going to go, "Is that Scott Redman with Leela?" Now, I want to tell you something. One of the most injurious defects of character that has plagued me, drunk and sober, and I've had to do a lot of work on it sober, has been mind reading. I think I know what people are thinking. And by the way, they're never thinking anything good. They're thinking, "Man, you're a hose. You can't do that." I mean, they're never thinking great stuff about me. And I heard it described to me one time, and I agree that I am not a mind reader. I'm barely a mind user sometimes. So, but this was another thing that I had to put on the inventory. I was mind reading what these guys would be thinking about me. And I go home, I call my sponsor, I tell him what's going on. And he said to me, I call him up and I said, "Oh, we're really getting the gift now. Yeah, this is a miracle. It is a big miracle, miracle." And he said to me, "I guess God had enough writers and needed a few cooks today." And then he said, "Scott, you told God you wanted to work for Ketchum, and you forgot to tell him what you wanted to do." Years later, when I was back on the Universal lot directing TV shows, this Grip came up to me. Grip is the guy who on a movie set makes sure everything's good for the shot. He came up to me and said, "Oh, you're that great caterer. You're such a sweet guy. What are you doing on a lot?" I said, "I'm directing the show on Stage 36. And he said, "Did you go right from the catering to the directing?" He was planning a different career path, I think, at our turn. I have a lot of problems. I've had a lot of problems in sobriety. I've had problems with money, with my sons. I've had problems in my marriage, in my career. I've had a lot of problems. I know there are people who don't have problems in sobriety. I'm very happy for them. And I'm not telling you got to have problems in sobriety. I am not telling you. I'm telling you I have had problems in sobriety. And I am seeking, and I'm hanging out with seekers. I want to know what to do. I want to expand my experience of the 11th step. I want to invite you. I want to invite everybody here. I don't know if you've ever been invited to do this, but I want to invite you now. I want to invite you to be a confident, grown person who has a place in the world. I want to invite you to do that. God invites you to do that. That's the entry-level job. I used to think that was nirvana. That's the entry-level job, And I don't get that sometimes. I don't get it. And I've never had outside help in Alcoholics Anonymous. I've gone to Eckhart Tolle and Anthony DeMello as spiritual teachers. I've used therapy. I've done different spiritual and physical disciplines, and not one of them is an outside help because I've never done any of them instead of AA. I've done all of them because of AA. Because when these problems come up, I'm resentful at Scott for being fat. It affects my self-esteem, pocketbook, ambition, personal relations, and sex. And I read the 10th step 9 times and go out and have a pie and a bowl of spaghetti. What does that have to do with sobriety? Nothing unless you're going through it. Absolutely nothing. And I don't care if it's food, I don't care if it's cigarettes, and this is not a self-help group. I've never seen such a not a self-help group in my life. All I'm telling you is that when I get filled with revulsion and self-hatred, I've got to throw myself the harder into working with others, and I can't work on myself. I've got to die of self, but I can't kill self. You can't kill self. You can't lose something on purpose, and you can't tickle yourself. You can't do it. So what you've told me is I've got to do this service work, which will surround the disease and starve it out. And I want the whole robust, sexy thing. I want the whole thing. So these other areas of my life, I'm seeking. And I'm saying, I don't know. Can you help me? Can you help me? And no one's ever said no. One of the secrets is I've stopped going to drowning people and asking for swimming lessons. Well, no. So if you're new here, I want to urge you to get the whole thing. I want to urge you to have the entry-level job, you know? If you're new, I want to welcome you to AA. And I want to tell you that the good news is that our problem mainly rests in our mind. Alcoholics Anonymous is the only recovery from a fatal illness that has a text that says, we absolutely insist on enjoying life. There's no book about cholera that says, cholera is a hoot. Oh, you're going to love cholera. Sure, you'll meet other people with cholera. Then you'll meet people who just caught cholera, and it doesn't get any better than that. My sponsor used to say, and I love this so much, that Alcoholics Anonymous is the only treatment for a fatal illness that he knew of that left the sufferer in better condition than they were in before they contracted the disease. Man, no way. And the bad news is our problem mainly rests in our mind. I met this newcomer years ago at a meeting. I went home, and he called me, and he talked to me for an hour. And I said, 4 times so you'd know I wasn't dead. He told me he had been stalking several women. He had a restraining order out against him. But everything's different now. He's 2 weeks sober, and it's all different. And then at the end of the hour, he said to me, God, I feel so alone. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, I don't have a woman. I said, I just talked to you for an hour without interrupting you. What do you mean? He said, well, I wish I had a woman. And I said to him, what exactly would you be bringing to a relationship right now besides stalking skills? What are you bringing to the table? People 2 weeks into remission from leukemia are not having dating problems. Alcoholics are, because our problem mainly rests in our mind, because our alcoholism goes below the horizon and stops presenting itself as a real and present danger. I act without reason, without explanation, and nothing. I mean, there are periods of time where I can keep it above the horizon. I fall into love, out of love, something horrible, something wonderful happens, and it stays above the horizon for a time. And then the time and place will come when it stops appearing as a real piece of business. And for 19 years and 10 months, my alcoholism has stayed above the horizon as a real piece of business all that time, even when I'm not concentrating on it. Because it's buoyed on the heads and the shoulders of the men and women of AA. Because that connective tissue, which for me is the face and the breath of God, is something that's being blown in my face all the time, but I got to show up for it. I have to show up for it. Some years ago, I was talking to a new guy. Nancy knew I was talking to him. And she walked to her room and she heard me say into the phone, let's say the aliens are coming. I said, look, I don't know if they're coming or not. That's an outside interest. Frankly, I don't know. I said, but I have one question for you. Why are they coming for you? Why are they coming for you? You have no life. You're 11 days sober. Why have they traversed the universe for your sorry ass? Why? Plus, he's sleeping with the Bible on his chest to ward them off. So they're going to traverse the universe, walk into his room, and go, oh no, the Bible, let's go home. I'm at my home group, and I'm sharing this story, and the guy who I'm talking about walks into the room, and I'm watching the cat, and he goes like this, long tells story. He goes, oh. So the horrible realization. Well, I want to tell you something. I am so proud that I've gone through this talk without injuring anybody. That I can tell you. And if you're new here, I want to urge you as much as I possibly can to take this thing as seriously as you can and go out there and have the time of your life. Welcome to AA. Welcome home. Thanks so much for having us this week.